Marcus wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished stacking the last of the firewood behind his cabin. The autumn air in the Montana wilderness carried a crisp bite that promised an early winter. His German shepherd Rex had been unusually restless all morning, pacing around the property and whining softly at the tree line. "What's got you all worked up, boy?" Marcus asked, scratching behind Rex's ears. The dog had been his constant companion for 6 years, ever since Marcus had retired from his job as a search and rescue coordinator. They'd moved to this remote cabin together, seeking peace after too many years of finding people who didn't always make it home. Rex suddenly bolted toward the forest, his powerful legs carrying him swiftly between the pine trees. Marcus called after him, but the dog disappeared into the thick undergrowth. This wasn't like Rex at all. The dog was well trained and rarely wandered off without permission. Marcus grabbed his jacket and flashlight, following the path Rex had taken. The afternoon sun was already beginning to set, casting long shadows between the trees. He called Rex's name repeatedly, hearing only the echo of his own voice bouncing off the mountainside. 20 minutes into his search, Marcus heard Rex barking in the distance. But it wasn't his usual bark. This sound was different, almost urgent, like when he'd found injured hikers during their search and rescue days. Marcus quickened his pace, pushing through low-hanging branches and stepping over fallen logs. He found Rex in a small clearing, sitting perfectly still next to what looked like a large piece of twisted metal. The object was partially buried in the earth as if it had crashed from a great height. Steam rose from various points along its surface, and Marcus could hear a faint humming sound coming from within. "Stay back, Rex," Marcus commanded, though the dog seemed calm and focused. As Marcus approached the wreckage, he noticed that the metal had an unusual blue-green tint and seemed to shimmer slightly in the fading light. This wasn't like any aircraft he'd ever seen during his years in search and rescue. Rex stood up and walked to a section of the wreckage that had been torn open. He looked back at Marcus and whined softly, then looked into the opening again. Marcus carefully made his way to Rex's side, shining his flashlight into the dark interior. What he saw made him take a step back in shock. Inside the craft was a small figure, no bigger than a child, with pale blue skin and silver hair. The being wore what appeared to be a form-fitting suit that glowed dimly in several places. Marcus could see that the figure was breathing but appeared to be unconscious. "Jesus," Marcus whispered. He'd seen a lot in his life, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. Rex, however, seemed completely unfazed. The dog carefully climbed partway into the wreckage and gently nudged the alien figure with his nose. The being's eyes fluttered open. They were large and violet-colored, with an intelligence that was unmistakably aware. When the alien saw Rex, instead of showing fear, a small smile crossed her face. She reached out with a slender hand and touched Rex's head. The dog's tail wagged slightly as if he understood that this being meant no harm. Marcus watched in amazement as the alien girl sat up slowly, wincing as she moved. She appeared to be injured, with what looked like a cut on her arm that glowed with the same faint light as her suit. She spoke in a language Marcus had never heard before, her voice musical and soft. Rex looked back at Marcus and barked once as if to say, "She needs help." Marcus knew he should be afraid. Everything in his rational mind told him to run, to call the authorities, to do anything but stand here in a forest clearing with what was clearly a being from another world. But looking at the girl's young face and seeing the way Rex had immediately taken to her, Marcus felt his protective instincts kick in. "Okay, Rex," he said quietly. "Let's help her." Marcus slowly approached the opening in the craft, keeping his hands visible and moving carefully. The alien girl watched him with those large violet eyes, seeming to assess whether he was a threat. When Marcus pointed to her injured arm and then to himself, making gestures indicating he wanted to help, she nodded slowly. Getting the alien girl out of the wreckage was easier than Marcus had expected. She was lighter than a human child of similar size, and once she understood his intentions, she cooperated fully. Rex stayed close to both of them, occasionally licking the girl's hand in what appeared to be his way of offering comfort. Once they were clear of the craft, Marcus got his first good look at their unexpected visitor. She stood about 4 feet tall, with delicate features and skin that seemed to have a subtle luminescence. Her silver hair fell to her shoulders, and her clothing appeared to be made of some kind of advanced material that adjusted to her movements. The girl reached into what looked like a pocket on her suit and pulled out a small device. She held it in her palm and spoke into it in her musical language. The device glowed for a moment. Then she tried speaking again, this time in heavily accented but recognizable English. "Thank you," she said, looking directly at Marcus. "My name is Zara. Your companion found me." Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. Not only was he faced with first contact with an alien species, but she could communicate with them. Rex sat down beside Zara and looked up at Marcus with what could only be described as pride, as if he'd done exactly what he was supposed to do. "I'm Marcus," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "And this is Rex. Are you hurt badly?" Zara looked at her injured arm and shook her head. "Not badly. But my ship?" She gestured toward the wreckage. "It cannot fly again." As darkness began to fall around them, Marcus realized he was faced with a decision that would change his life forever. A young alien girl was stranded on Earth, injured and alone, with only him and his dog to help her. Everything about the situation should have terrified him, but looking at Rex's calm acceptance of their new friend, Marcus felt a strange sense of certainty. "Come on," he said, gesturing toward the path back to his cabin. "Let's get that arm looked at." As they walked through the forest together, Marcus couldn't help but notice how Rex had positioned himself between him and Zara, as if the dog had already decided to protect them both. The beginning of an extraordinary friendship had just taken root in the Montana wilderness. The walk back to the cabin took twice as long as usual. Zara moved carefully, favoring her injured arm, while Rex trotted alongside her with the patience of a therapy dog. Marcus found himself constantly looking over his shoulder, half expecting to see government helicopters or worse, but the forest remained peacefully quiet except for the crunch of leaves under their feet. When they reached the cabin, Marcus hesitated at the door. Once he brought Zara inside, there would be no going back. He'd be harboring an alien being, something that would probably violate every law and protocol he could imagine. But looking at the young girl who barely came up to his chest, and seeing Rex's unwavering support of her, Marcus knew he'd already made his choice. Inside, the warmth from the wood-burning stove immediately made them all more comfortable. Zara looked around the simple cabin with obvious curiosity, her violet eyes taking in the rustic furniture, the stone fireplace, and the mounted photographs of mountain landscapes. When her gaze fell on a framed picture of Marcus and Rex on a successful rescue mission, she pointed to it. "You save people?" she asked, her translator device glowing softly as she spoke. "I used to," Marcus replied. "Rex and I worked in search and rescue for many years." Zara nodded thoughtfully, then looked down at Rex, who had settled himself at her feet. "He has good heart. I feel it when he found me." Marcus was struck by her words. In all his years working with Rex, he'd always known the dog had an exceptional ability to sense people's emotions and intentions. It seemed that ability extended beyond human beings. After settling Zara in his most comfortable chair, Marcus brought out his first aid kit. The cut on her arm was unlike anything he'd seen before. The wound itself seemed to be healing slowly, the edges glowing with a soft blue light, but there appeared to be some kind of debris embedded in it. "This might hurt," Marcus warned as he examined the injury more closely. "It is not pain like you know," Zara explained, holding out her arm. "My people heal differently. But the metal from ship is wrong. It stops healing." Marcus carefully cleaned around the wound with antiseptic, noting that Zara barely flinched. Using a pair of tweezers, he managed to extract several small metal fragments that looked similar to the material from her ship. As soon as the last piece was removed, the blue glow intensified, and Marcus watched in amazement as the cut began to close itself. "That's incredible," he said softly. "Your kindness helps more than you know," Zara replied. "Many species would not help stranger." Rex, who had been watching the entire process intently, now approached Zara and gently placed his head on her lap. She smiled and ran her fingers through his thick fur, speaking to him in her own language. Rex's tail wagged, and Marcus could swear the dog understood every word. As the evening progressed, Marcus learned more about his unexpected guest. Zara was what she called a seeker, someone who traveled between worlds to learn about different species and cultures. Her people, the Altarians, were peaceful explorers who had been watching Earth from a distance for many years. "We do not make contact usually," Zara explained as she accepted a cup of tea Marcus had prepared. Your species is still young, not ready for wider galaxy. But you're here now, Marcus pointed out. Zara's expression grew sad. My ship had problem with navigation system. I was supposed to just, fly by? But something pulled me down. I crashed far from where I meant to be. She pulled out another device and showed Marcus a display that meant nothing to him, but seemed to distress her greatly. My people will look for me, but this planet is big. It may take long time. Marcus felt a wave of sympathy for the young alien. She was stranded far from home, possibly for an unknown length of time with no way to contact her people. It reminded him of some of the most difficult rescues he'd handled, where people had been lost for days or weeks in the wilderness. Well, he said, you're welcome to stay here as long as you need to. Zara's eyes widened with surprise. You would do this? You do not even know me. Rex found you, Marcus said simply. That's good enough for me. Besides, you're hurt and stranded. Where I come from, we don't leave people in need. That night, Marcus gave Zara his bed while he took the couch. Rex, however, had other ideas. The dog positioned himself on the floor between the bedroom and the living room, as if standing guard over both of his humans. It was a behavior Marcus had never seen from him before, but it felt right somehow. Marcus lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling and trying to process everything that had happened. He was harboring an alien being in his remote cabin, something that would probably bring the full weight of the government down on him if discovered. But every time doubt crept in, he thought about Zara's grateful smile and the way Rex had immediately accepted her as family. The next morning, Marcus woke to find Zara already up, sitting by the window with Rex at her side. She was looking out at the forest with the expression of wonder, and Rex seemed content to simply be near her. Your world is very beautiful, she said when she noticed Marcus was awake. So much life, so much harmony. You should see it in spring, Marcus replied, joining them by the window. Everything comes alive after the winter. I would like that, Zara said softly. Then she looked down at Rex, who was watching them both intently. He dreams of running in snow. I saw this when I touched his mind last night. Marcus was startled. You can read minds. Not read. More like feel, emotion, simple thoughts. Your Rex has very clear thoughts. He loves you very much. And now, she paused, scratching behind Rex's ears. He wants to protect both of us. As if to confirm her words, Rex stood up and moved to position himself where he could see both the window and the door. His ears were alert, and Marcus recognized the stance from their search and rescue days. Rex was on duty. Smart dog, Zara said with a smile. The smartest, Marcus agreed. They spent the morning together, with Zara helping Marcus with simple tasks around the cabin. She was fascinated by everything from the wood-burning stove to the hand-pumped water well. Her people, she explained, had long ago developed technology that made such manual labor unnecessary, but she found the simple, direct relationship between effort and result appealing. Rex seemed to appoint himself as Zara's personal guide, showing her around the property and staying close whenever she seemed uncertain about something. The bond between them was growing stronger by the hour, and Marcus found himself thinking that maybe, just maybe, this impossible situation might actually work out. But as afternoon approached, Marcus noticed Rex's behavior beginning to change. The dog kept looking toward the forest, his ears pricked and his body tense. Something was coming, and Rex knew it before any of them. Rex's sudden alertness put Marcus immediately on edge. After years of working together, Marcus had learned to trust his partner's instincts completely. When Rex sensed danger, there was always a reason. The dog moved to the window, his body rigid with concentration as he stared into the forest. What is it, boy? Marcus asked. But Rex remained focused on something beyond human perception. Zara, who had been examining one of Marcus's rescue medals, suddenly went very still. Her violet eyes grew wide, and she pressed her hand to her chest where a pendant Marcus hadn't noticed before began to glow. They come, she whispered. Your people? Marcus asked, feeling a mixture of relief and concern. Zara nodded, but her expression was troubled rather than joyful. Yes, but something is wrong. The signal is not what it should be. Before Marcus could ask what she meant, Rex began to growl low in his throat. It was a sound Marcus had only heard a few times before, usually when Rex sensed someone with violent intentions. The dog positioned himself directly in front of Zara, his hackles raised. Through the window, Marcus saw lights moving between the trees. Not the warm white light of flashlights, but the same blue-green glow he'd seen from Zara's crashed ship. 3 distinct light sources were approaching the cabin, moving with purpose. "Should we hide?" Marcus asked. Zara shook her head. "They have already found us." "But Marcus," she turned to him with urgent eyes, "some of my people believe contact with young species is dangerous. They think it corrupts both sides. If they discover you helped me, what would happen? They would remove your memories of me. And they would take me back for punishment." Marcus felt anger rising in his chest. The idea of anyone threatening this young being who had done nothing wrong but crash land on his planet sparked something protective in him. Rex seemed to sense his emotions and moved closer to both of them. The lights were now visible through the trees surrounding the cabin. As they watched, 3 figures emerged into the clearing. Like Zara, they were small and slender with pale skin, but their clothing was different, more formal, military-looking. The one in the center carried a device that pulsed with bright light. "Zara of the 3rd house," a voice called out in accented English. "You will come out immediately. You have violated the accords of non-interference." Zara's shoulders slumped. "That is Commander Vex. He is very strict about the old ways." "The old ways that say you can't help someone who's hurt and stranded?" Marcus asked. "The old ways that say contact with primitive species leads to contamination of pure Altarian culture," Zara said bitterly. Rex growled again, and Marcus realized the dog was reacting to the hostile emotions of the beings outside. Rex had always been able to sense when someone meant harm, and apparently that ability worked on aliens too. Marcus made a decision that surprised even himself. "Stay behind me," he told Zara, then opened the cabin door and stepped outside. The 3 Altarians were indeed similar to Zara in basic appearance, but their bearing was completely different. Where Zara had an open, curious demeanor, these beings carried themselves with cold authority. Commander Vex stepped forward, his device pointed directly at Marcus. "Human," Vex said, his translator making his voice sound mechanical. "You have been exposed to forbidden knowledge. This will be corrected." "Nobody's correcting anything," Marcus replied firmly. "Zara crashed in my woods, injured and alone. I helped her because it was the right thing to do." "The right thing?" Vex's expression showed contempt. "You know nothing of right. Your species has not earned the right to know of ours." Behind Marcus, Zara emerged from the cabin with Rex at her side. The dog immediately focused on Commander Vex, sensing the threat he represented. "Commander, please," Zara said. "This human shows the qualities we value most. Compassion, loyalty, protection of those in need. How can this be contamination?" "You have been influenced by their primitive emotions," Vex replied coldly. "It proves the danger of contact. You will come with us now." "And if she doesn't want to?" Marcus asked. Vex raised his device toward Marcus. "Then you will be made to forget and she will be taken regardless." That's when Rex acted. The dog had been perfectly still, watching and listening, but when Vex's device began to glow with threatening energy, Rex's protective instincts kicked in. With a speed that surprised everyone, Rex leaped forward and knocked the device from Vex's hands before the commander could react. The device skittered across the ground, and the other 2 Altarians moved to retrieve it, but Rex positioned himself over it, growling menacingly. "Fascinating," said one of the other aliens, a female with lighter coloring than the others. The creature understood the threat and acted to protect its pack. "Healer Kira," Vex snapped. "This proves nothing except that these animals are unpredictably violent." "Does it?" Kira approached slowly, her hands visible and non-threatening. Rex watched her carefully but didn't growl. "May I?" she asked Marcus. Marcus nodded, curious about this alien who seemed different from her commander. Kira knelt down near Rex, staying just out of reach but close enough to study him. "Remarkable," she murmured. "His neural patterns show complex emotional reasoning. He assessed the threat, determined the best course of action, and executed it flawlessly. This level of strategic thinking is impressive for a non-technological species." "He's not just any dog," Marcus said proudly. "Rex has saved more lives than I can count. He's my partner." Kira stood up, looking thoughtfully between Marcus and Zara. "Commander, perhaps we should reconsider our approach here." "The law is clear," Vex insisted. "No contact with primitives." "But look at what contact has produced." Kira gestured toward the group. "A human willing to risk his safety for a stranger. a canine capable of complex loyalty beyond its own species, and Zara, who has learned valuable lessons about compassion in action. Rex, seeming to sense that Kira was not a threat, moved back to Zara's side, but kept himself positioned where he could reach Commander Vex quickly if needed. The Accords exist for good reason, Vex said, but Marcus noticed some uncertainty creeping into his voice. The Accords were written by beings who never experienced true interspecies friendship, Zara said quietly. They feared contamination, but what if they were wrong? What if contact with species like humans could make us better, not worse? Marcus watched this debate with growing hope. It seemed not all of Zara's people shared Commander Vex's rigid views. The Council must decide this. The third alien spoke for the first time. But first we must determine if the human can be trusted with knowledge of our existence. Vex looked like he wanted to argue, but healer Kira stepped forward. I propose a test, she said. We observe their behavior together for one day. If the human proves worthy of trust, we consider alternatives to memory modification. Marcus felt Rex lean against his leg, offering support. Looking down at his faithful companion and then at Zara, who was watching him with hopeful eyes, Marcus realized that whatever test they had in mind, he and Rex would face it together. The test, as healer Kira explained it, seemed deceptively simple. Marcus would be given a device that could translate and record everything they said. For 24 hours he would live normally with this knowledge while the Altarians observed him remotely. If he tried to contact authorities, share the information or exploit it in any way, they would know immediately and take appropriate action. The device will also monitor your emotional state, Kira explained as she handed Marcus a small, crystal-like object. We need to understand how your species processes the knowledge of our existence. And if I pass? Marcus asked. Then we discuss alternatives, Kira replied while Commander Vex frowned disapprovingly. And if I fail, then you forget this ever happened. And Zara returns with us, Vex said firmly. Marcus looked down at Rex, who was sitting calmly beside Zara, then at the young alien who had become so important to him in such a short time. The weight of the decision was enormous, but there was really only one choice he could make. Okay, he said, accepting the device. I agree to your test. As soon as the crystal touched his palm, Marcus felt a strange warmth spread through his hand. The three visiting Altarians stepped back, and suddenly they seemed to shimmer and fade from view. They're still there, Zara explained quietly. The device makes you unable to see their observation mode, but they watch everything now. Marcus nodded, clipping the small crystal to his shirt. So what do? We live, Zara said simply. Show them who humans really are. The rest of that day passed in a strange kind of normalcy. Marcus went about his usual routines, chopping wood, maintaining equipment, preparing meals, while Zara helped and asked questions about everything. Rex stayed close to both of them, his protective instincts clearly still active even though they couldn't see their observers. That evening, as they sat by the fire, Marcus asked Zara about her people and their fear of contact. Long ago, she explained, the Altarians contacted a species called the Vorthak. They were younger than humans are now, but they seemed promising. The contact changed both species, but not in good ways. The Vorthak became obsessed with our technology and started wars trying to acquire it. Some Altarians became fascinated with Vorthak aggression and tried to copy it. What happened? Marcus asked. The Vorthak destroyed themselves within 50 of their years. The Altarians who had been influenced by them tried to take control of our government. We had our first civil war in thousands of years. Zara stared into the fire. After that, the Accords were written. No contact with species below certain technological and emotional development levels. But you don't agree with that? I think the Accords teach fear instead of wisdom, Zara said. Look at you and Rex. You could have hurt me when you found me. You could have tried to take my technology. Instead, you gave me safety and friendship. How is this contamination? Rex, who had been lying between them, suddenly lifted his head and looked toward the door. His ears perked up, and Marcus recognized the alert behavior immediately. Someone's coming, Marcus said, standing up. Through the window, he could see headlights moving up the mountain road toward his cabin. Zara stood quickly, worry clear on her face. What do we do? Marcus felt the weight of the test heavy on his shoulders. This was probably exactly what the Altarians were waiting to see. How he would handle a situation where protecting Zara might require lying to other humans. The vehicle stopped outside, and Marcus heard two car doors slam. Heavy footsteps approached the cabin and someone knocked firmly on the door. "Mr. Thompson?" a voice called. "This is Agent Parker, FBI. We need to speak with you." Marcus's heart began to race, but he forced himself to stay calm. Rex moved to stand beside Zara, and Marcus could see the trust in both their eyes. They were counting on him. "Just a minute," Marcus called back. He turned to Zara and whispered, "There's a storage room behind the kitchen."
"Hide there with Rex. What about you?"
Zara whispered back, "I'll handle this. Trust me." Zara and Rex disappeared into the back room just as Marcus opened the door. Two federal agents stood on his porch showing their badges. "Agent Parker," the taller one said. "This is Agent Morrison. We're investigating some unusual electromagnetic activity detected in this area yesterday. Several satellites picked up energy signatures that don't match any known technology." "I wouldn't know anything about that," Marcus replied, stepping outside and closing the door behind him. "I just live here quietly. Mind if we take a look around?" Agent Morrison asked. "Actually, I do mind," Marcus said firmly. "You have badges, but you don't have a warrant. This is private property." Agent Parker smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "Mr. Thompson, your cooperation would be appreciated. We're dealing with potential national security issues here." Marcus felt the crystal device warm against his chest, and he wondered if the Altarians were watching this interaction with particular interest. Here was the test. Would he cave to pressure from authority? Or would he stand his ground to protect someone who needed his help? "I understand your position," Marcus said calmly, "but I know my rights. If you want to search my property, get a warrant." The agents exchanged glances, clearly not having expected this level of resistance from a retired search and rescue worker living in the wilderness. "Mr. Thompson?" Agent Parker tried again. "We have reason to believe you may have found something that crashed in these woods. Something that could be dangerous if mishandled." "I haven't found anything dangerous," Marcus replied truthfully. Zara certainly wasn't dangerous. Rex chose that moment to bark once from inside the cabin, and both agents immediately focused on the sound. "That your dog?" Agent Morrison asked. "Yes, Rex doesn't like strangers much." "We'd like to see him," Agent Parker said. "Sometimes dogs find things their owners miss." Marcus realized this was becoming a critical moment. The agents weren't going to leave without some kind of satisfaction, and they clearly suspected he was hiding something. "Look," Marcus said, making a decision that felt right in his gut. "I've lived in these mountains for 6 years. I know every sound, every smell, every animal track. If something had crashed here, I'd have found it by now. Maybe your satellites picked up interference from the old mining equipment scattered around these hills." He gestured toward the forest. "There are abandoned copper mines all through this area. Some of them still have old electrical equipment rusting in them. Could that cause the kind of readings you're talking about?" The agents considered this, and Marcus could see them weighing whether his explanation was plausible. "We'll be checking those mining sites," Agent Parker finally said. "But Mr. Thompson, if you do find anything unusual, you need to contact us immediately. Some things are too important for national security to be handled by civilians." "Understood," Marcus replied. After the agents left, Marcus waited a full 10 minutes before calling Zara and Rex out of hiding. When they emerged, Zara looked at him with something approaching awe. "You lied to them," she said, "to protect me." "I didn't lie," Marcus corrected. "I just didn't tell them everything I know." "There's a difference." Rex approached Marcus and nudged his hand, and Marcus could swear there was approval in the dog's eyes. "Your test just got a lot more interesting," Zara said softly, and Marcus realized she was probably right. The Altarians materialized in the cabin without warning, their cloaking technology dropping like a veil being pulled away. Healer Kira looked pleased, while Commander Vex appeared thoughtful rather than disapproving. The third member of their group, who had introduced himself as Observer Thane, was studying readings on a complex device. "Remarkable," Kira said, approaching Marcus. "Your stress levels spiked when the agents arrived, indicating fear, but your determination to protect Zara never wavered. Most fascinating." "The human showed tactical thinking," Observer Thane added, looking up from his device. "He provided plausible alternative explanations for our energy signatures, while revealing nothing about Zara's presence. This suggests capability for complex reasoning under pressure." Commander Vex remained silent, but Marcus noticed he was watching Rex with particular interest. The dog had positioned himself between the group and the door, alert but not aggressive toward the Altarians. So did I pass? Marcus asked. The test revealed something unexpected, Kira replied. Your species may be younger than ours technologically, but your emotional sophistication is quite advanced. The way you balance truth-telling with protection of a vulnerable being shows ethical reasoning we didn't expect. However, Commander Vex finally spoke. We have detected increased activity from your government. More agents are coming and they have equipment that may detect us even through our cloaking. Zara moved closer to Marcus and Rex. How much time do we have? Perhaps 6 of your hours, Observer Thane replied. They are bringing electromagnetic scanners and thermal imaging devices. Our presence will become impossible to hide. Marcus felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. What does that mean for us? It means decisions must be made quickly, Kira said. Commander Vex, what is your assessment? Vex studied Marcus for a long moment, then looked down at Rex, who met his gaze steadily. The human has demonstrated loyalty, strategic thinking, and ethical behavior under pressure. The canine shows intelligence and protective instincts that suggest deep emotional bonds beyond simple training. And, Kira prompted, and I find myself questioning whether the Accords consider all possibilities, Vex admitted. This is not the corruption we were taught to fear. Marcus was surprised to hear this admission from the rigid commander, but before he could respond, Rex suddenly stood up and moved to the window. His low growl indicated he sensed something approaching. They returned sooner than expected, Observer Thane said, checking his device. Multiple vehicles, at least a dozen individuals. Through the window, Marcus could see lights moving up the mountain road. This time there were several vehicles and the lights were brighter and more focused than before. They're serious this time, Marcus said. They'll have equipment, probably a full team. We could cloak the cabin, Kira suggested. Not with this many sensors active, Vex replied. They would detect the energy distortion. Marcus made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. Then we don't hide. What do you mean? Zara asked. I mean, maybe it's time for first contact to happen properly. Marcus looked at each of the Altarians in turn. You've seen that humans can be trustworthy. You've seen that we can handle knowledge responsibly. Maybe the answer isn't to hide from my government, but to meet them honestly. Impossible, Vex said immediately. Your species isn't ready for full contact. Some of us aren't ready, Marcus corrected. But some of us are. And the only way to find out which is to take the risk. Rex barked softly as if agreeing with Marcus's assessment. Zara reached down and placed her hand on the dog's head. Rex thinks it's a good idea too, she said with a slight smile. This is not a matter for voting. Vex protested, actually. Healer Kira said slowly. Perhaps it is. The Accords require unanimous agreement for major policy changes. We 3 are the appointed observers for this situation. If we agree that first contact is appropriate here, we have the authority to proceed. You cannot be serious, Vex said. I am completely serious. Kira looked at Marcus with growing respect. This human could have exploited our technology, sought personal gain, or betrayed us to his authorities for reward. Instead, he protected Zara and demonstrated exactly the qualities the Accords claim his species lacks. Observer Thane nodded slowly. My readings confirm exceptional emotional regulation and ethical consistency. If we are to ever make contact with younger species, this individual represents an ideal candidate. The lights outside were getting closer, and Marcus could hear the rumble of multiple engines. Time was running out. Commander, Marcus said, addressing Vex directly. I know you're trying to protect your people. That's what leaders do. But sometimes protecting people means taking calculated risks. You've observed us for 3 days. You know Rex and I mean no harm. You know Zara is safe with us. The question, Vex said slowly, is whether your government can be trusted with this knowledge. Only one way to find out, Marcus replied. Rex moved to stand beside Zara, and Marcus noticed that the dog seemed completely calm despite the approaching threat. Rex trusted Marcus's judgment completely, and that trust was infectious. If we do this, Vex said finally, and it goes badly, the consequences could affect both our species. If we don't do this, Marcus countered, you'll be running and hiding forever. Eventually, humans will develop enough technology to detect you anyway. Wouldn't it be better to make contact when you can control the circumstances? The vehicles were now visible through the trees, and Marcus could count at least 5 sets of headlights. We need to decide now, Kira said urgently. Zara stepped forward. I vote for contact. Marcus and Rex have shown me what humanity can be at its best. Agreed, said Healer Kira. This is an opportunity to establish a positive relationship. All eyes turned to Commander Vex. The alien leader looked at Marcus, then at Rex, then at Zara. His expression showed the weight of the decision he was about to make. Very well, he said finally. But we do this carefully. Observer Thane. Prepare the translation matrix for multiple individuals. Healer Kira. Ready the medical scanners in case there are adverse reactions. And human. Marcus, he supplied. Marcus, you will speak for your species in this moment. Choose your words carefully. The vehicle stopped outside the cabin and Marcus could hear car doors slamming and voices giving orders. Rex positioned himself at Marcus's left side while Zara took his right. Behind them, the three Altarians prepared for humanity's first official contact with alien intelligence. Ready? Marcus asked his companions. Rex's tail wagged once. Zara nodded with determination. The Altarian stood ready. Marcus opened the door and stepped outside to meet first contact head-on, his faithful dog and alien friend beside him. Agent Parker was clearly surprised to see Marcus waiting for them on his porch, but his expression quickly shifted to suspicion when he noticed Zara standing beside him. The young Altarian looked small next to Marcus, but she stood with quiet dignity, her violet eyes reflecting the bright lights from the government vehicles. "Mr. Thompson," Agent Parker called out as his team spread out around the cabin. "Step away from the child and keep your hands visible." "She's not a child exactly," Marcus replied calmly. "And before you do anything you might regret, I think you should know that we're not alone here." As if on cue, the three Altarian observers materialized from their cloaked state. Agent Parker's team immediately drew their weapons, shouting commands and training laser sights on the aliens. "Everyone stop!" Marcus called out, stepping forward with his hands raised. "Nobody move. This is first contact, people. How we handle the next few minutes could determine the future of both our species. Sir, get away from the hostiles," one of the agents yelled. "They're not hostiles," Marcus replied firmly. "Agent Parker, I'm going to reach slowly into my pocket and pull out something you need to see." Marcus carefully extracted the crystal device the Altarians had given him. As soon as it was visible, several pieces of equipment the agents carried began beeping and flashing. "This device has been monitoring everything for 3 days," Marcus explained. "These people have been watching to see if humans can handle knowledge of their existence responsibly. So far, we're not making a great first impression." Commander Vex stepped forward, his translator glowing as he spoke. "I am Commander Vex of the Altarian Exploration Corps. We come in peace, as your species says." The agents kept their weapons trained on the aliens, but Marcus could see uncertainty creeping into their faces. This clearly wasn't the scenario they'd been trained for. "Agent Parker," Marcus said, "I know this is overwhelming, but these people saved my life when I was helping their injured crew member. They could have hurt me at any time over the past 3 days, but they chose to observe and learn instead." Rex, who had been sitting calmly throughout the standoff, suddenly stood up and walked directly toward Agent Parker. The agent's weapon tracked the dog, but Rex simply sat down at his feet and looked up at him with calm, intelligent eyes. "Your canine understands the situation," Healer Kira observed. "He seeks to diffuse tension through non-threatening contact." Agent Parker looked down at Rex and Marcus saw some of the aggression leave his posture. "Smart dog," the agent murmured. "Rex has worked with law enforcement before," Marcus explained. "He knows good people when he sees them. And he's telling you these aliens are not a threat." Agent Morrison lowered his weapon slightly. "Sir, we need to call this in to headquarters." "Actually," Observer Thane spoke up, "that might not be necessary yet. We would prefer to establish proper protocols before involving larger governmental structures." "You want to negotiate?" Agent Parker asked. "We want to ensure that contact benefits both species," Commander Vex replied. "Your companion Marcus has shown us admirable human qualities, but we need assurance that his example represents human potential, not an exception." Zara stepped forward and Marcus noticed that several agents tensed again. "May I speak?" she asked softly. Agent Parker nodded warily. "3 days ago I crashed in your forest, injured and far from home," Zara began, her translator making her words clear to everyone present. "Marcus found me and helped me without asking for anything in return. When my people came to retrieve me, he protected me from those who would have erased his memories simply for knowing about us." She gestured to Rex, who had returned to her side. This animal, who your people train for rescue and protection, accepted me immediately. He judged me by my actions and intentions, not by my appearance or origin. What she's saying, Marcus added, is that the best of humanity was on display these past few days. These people have been watching to see if we can handle contact with alien intelligence without trying to exploit it or weaponize it. Agent Parker exchanged glances with his team, then slowly holstered his weapon. And their assessment? Healer Kira answered, We are cautiously optimistic. But first contact is too important for hasty decisions. We propose a gradual introduction process. What would that look like? Agent Morrison asked, also lowering his weapon. Commander Vex consulted a device, then looked back at the assembled humans. We would begin with a small group of your most trustworthy individuals. Scientists, diplomats, people like Marcus who have demonstrated wisdom and emotional maturity. And what's in it for humanity? Agent Parker asked. Knowledge, Observer Thane replied. Medical advances that could eliminate many diseases. Clean energy technology, agricultural techniques that could end hunger on your world. In exchange for what? In exchange for proof that humanity can handle such gifts responsibly, Vex said. Your species is still quite young. You have wars, environmental destruction, inequality. We need assurance that our technology won't be used to make these problems worse. Marcus felt the weight of the moment. Here he was, a simple search and rescue worker standing at the center of humanity's most important moment in history. Rex pressed against his leg, offering support, while Zara watched him with trust and hope in her violet eyes. Agent Parker, Marcus said, I know you have protocols and procedures, but this is bigger than any of that. These people could have revealed themselves to world leaders or military commanders. Instead, they chose to make contact through one guy in a cabin in Montana, because they wanted to see what ordinary humans are really like. And what they found, Agent Morrison said slowly, was someone who risked his own safety to help a stranger? Exactly, Zara said with a smile. This is what we hope humanity can become. Agent Parker was quiet for a long moment, studying the faces around him. Finally, he spoke into his radio. Base, this is Parker. We need immediate contact with the Secretary of State and the President's Science Advisor. We have a situation that requires the highest level of diplomatic protocol. Copy that, Parker. What's the nature of the situation? Agent Parker looked at Marcus, Rex, and Zara, then at the three Altarians watching patiently. First contact, he said simply, and it's going better than we ever imagined. Rex wagged his tail once as if approving of the agent's choice. Zara reached down and scratched behind the dog's ears. Good boy, Rex, she said. Good boy. Marcus realized that his faithful companion had just helped facilitate first contact between two species, and somehow, that seemed perfectly natural. After all, Rex had always been good at bringing different beings together. 6 months later, Marcus stood in his expanded cabin watching through the window as Rex and Zara played in the snow-covered clearing. The dog had taught the young Altarian how to catch snowballs, while she had shown him how to sense the emotions of the local wildlife. It was an exchange of knowledge that perfectly symbolized everything that had grown from that first moment of contact. The cabin itself had been transformed into something between a home and a diplomatic outpost. The original rustic structure remained, but it now housed advanced communication equipment that allowed Zara to stay in touch with her people, and meeting spaces where carefully selected humans and Altarians could interact under controlled conditions. Marcus had become something he never expected to be, humanity's first alien ambassador. Not through any political appointment, but simply because Rex had found an injured girl in the woods, and Marcus had chosen to help. The initial weeks following first contact had been intense. Government officials, scientists, and diplomats had descended on his quiet mountain retreat. But throughout all the chaos, the bond between Marcus, Rex, and Zara had remained the center point around which everything else revolved. Commander Vex had become a frequent visitor, his initial skepticism about humans gradually replaced by genuine respect. He often joined Marcus for morning walks with Rex, fascinated by the dog's ability to navigate complex terrain while maintaining constant awareness of his human companion's location and emotional state. Your species may lack advanced technology, Vex had said during one of these walks, but your capacity for loyalty and intuitive cooperation is remarkable. Healer Kira had established a small medical research station in the nearby town, working with human doctors to develop treatments that combined Altarian healing knowledge with human medical techniques. The early results were promising beyond anything either species had achieved alone. Observer Thane had taken on the role of cultural exchange coordinator, documenting the ways that humans and Altarians could learn from each other without losing their essential identity. His reports to the Altarian Council had been instrumental in gaining approval for expanded contact. But it was the simple friendship between a man, his dog, and an alien girl that continued to provide the best evidence that such cooperation could work. Marcus opened the door and called out to his friends.
Hot chocolate's ready.
Rex immediately began bounding through the snow toward the cabin, while Zara followed with the graceful movements her people had perfected. They both arrived at the door covered in snow and grinning with joy. Rex says the snow tastes different today, Zara reported as they stamped their feet on the porch. More minerals from the mountains. Marcus was no longer surprised by Zara's ability to interpret Rex's thoughts and sensations. The bond between them had grown stronger over the months, and Rex seemed to understand far more about Altarian communication than anyone had thought possible. Inside, they settled around the fireplace with their warm drinks. Rex positioned himself between Marcus and Zara, as had become his habit. The dog had appointed himself the guardian of their little family unit, and he took the job seriously. "Any word from the council?" Marcus asked. Zara nodded, her expression bright with excitement. "They've approved the next phase. 10 more Altarian observers will join us next month, and 20 human scientists will begin training for our cultural exchange program." "That's wonderful," Marcus said, and he meant it. The careful, gradual expansion of contact had been working better than anyone had dared hope. "Better still," Zara continued, "they want Rex to be part of the training program. They believe other humans could learn from watching how he approaches interspecies relationships." Rex looked up at the mention of his name, his tail wagging. Marcus laughed and ruffled the dog's fur. "Did you hear that, boy? You're going to be a teacher." As if he understood perfectly, Rex stood up and walked to the communication console, where images from the Altarian homeworld often appeared. He sat down and stared at the screen expectantly. "He wants to see the new observers," Zara explained. "He likes to know who he'll be working with." Marcus activated the console, and soon 3 new Altarian faces appeared on the screen. Rex studied each one intently, his head tilted in concentration. "He says the young one is nervous but eager," Zara translated. "The middle one is curious about Earth animals, and the older one reminds him of Commander Vex but happier." The accuracy of Rex's assessments had amazed everyone. Somehow the dog could read Altarian emotional states as easily as human ones, making him an invaluable part of the contact team. A chime from the console indicated an incoming message. Agent Parker's face appeared on the screen, calling from the newly established First Contact Office in Washington. "Marcus, how are things up there?" Parker asked. "Quiet and productive," Marcus replied. "What's the word from the outside world?" "Better than we hoped. The gradual disclosure has been working. Scientific communities are excited. General public is curious but not panicked. And international cooperation has actually improved. Turns out having aliens watching makes people want to put their best foot forward." "And any problems?" "Some resistance from military hardliners who want more aggressive access to Altarian technology. But the president is backing the gradual approach. The success of your program is our best argument for patience." After ending the call, Marcus looked around at his expanded family. Zara was teaching Rex a simple Altarian phrase, while the dog listened with the serious concentration he'd always brought to learning new commands. "You know," Marcus said, "when I moved to this cabin, I thought I was retiring from helping people. Instead, you helped 2 entire species find each other," Zara pointed out. "Rex helped," Marcus corrected. "I just followed his lead." As if agreeing, Rex stood up and walked to the door, looking back at them expectantly. It was time for their evening patrol of the property, a routine that had started as a security measure, but had become a peaceful way to end each day. As they walked through the quiet forest together, Marcus reflected on how much had changed. The Montana wilderness was still the same, but now it was also the site of humanity's most important ongoing experiment in interspecies cooperation. Rex trotted ahead of them, alert to every sound and scent but relaxed in the way that indicated he sensed no threats. Zara walked beside Marcus, comfortable in the Earth environment she'd come to love. "Do you ever regret it?" Marcus asked. "Being stranded here, I mean." Stranded? Zara laughed. Marcus, I'm not stranded. I'm home. This is where my best friends live. Rex stopped and looked back at them, his tail wagging in agreement. Then he continued forward, leading them safely through the darkness as he'd done countless times before. In the distance, lights from the town twinkled peacefully while overhead, stars from both Earth and Altair shone down on a friendship that had changed two worlds forever.